Aitkin County, a viewer wants to know what's happening with the hands-free bill, and this viewer is concerned because viewer thinks the bill's kind of turned into a revenue stream instead of a safety measure. I think the viewer's unhappy with where it's going. Well, who can tell us what the status of that is? Should we start with you? Do you, Representative Freiberg?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I would dispute the characterization of it as a revenue generator. It's passed both the House and the Senate by a pretty broad bipartisan margin. There's different language in both chambers, so they're probably currently being worked out in a conference committee right now. Distracted driving is a cause when 1 in 4 deaths. It contributes to 59 deaths and 223 serious injuries annually in Minnesota. There's 16 other states plus the District of Columbia that have hands-free phone laws in place. There are exceptions built into the laws for emergencies, for items with one-touch activation. So, I don't see it being a big revenue generator, but I do see it improving safety significantly.
Senator Champion?
Hands-free and distracted driving is something that is very important, but I think we need to be very careful when we think in terms of how do we legislate such an issue. And I think that there are equally other issues where people are distracted from eating a hamburger to putting on makeup to doing other things. And I think we have to just think really deeply about how do we balance that. Now also, some of the legislation that has come forward will render it a primary offense as opposed to a secondary offense. And you being
you tell our viewers what that means. I think it'd be useful for our viewers to know what that means.
So a primary offense means that if the police or law enforcement see you doing a particular thing, they can stop you for that reason. Secondary offense means that they can't stop you for that reason, but there has to be something else that primarily that you've done as an infraction, and then if they see secondarily that you've done this other thing, they can now cite you for that. Some of the concerns that I have about it is wanting to make sure that we're clear about the definitions of what is hands-free mode, right? Some of the legislation, talks about accessories. Well, does it have to be a built-in accessory? Can my clothing be an accessory? What if Senator Daines is driving and his phone is in his pocket and he can talk with the phone in his pocket because it's on a speaker, but both hands are on the wheel? Is that okay, right? I'm also concerned about it from the perspective of wanting to make sure that law enforcement and others are not using it as an opportunity to stop certain members of our society. I think there should be tied to this legislation opportunities for them to record those stops and who they're stopping, so we can make sure that the patterns, the stopping patterns isn't slighted in any one way or another. So that's what I see. I see it as important. How do we balance it so that it's fair, and how do we make sure that everyone is judged fairly and adequately, and that there's no room for discretion that could be abused?
Senator Daines?
Well, I think we have to move in this direction. We have way too many accidents, and people are getting either seriously injured or, in other cases, killed, and just the cell phones are involved. So, it's not a popular move, but I think we have to do it. I think we have to keep it fair and balanced, as Senator Champion said, but I also think we have to keep the fines in check so that we're not using it as a way to raise revenue. We're using it as a way to get people to stop using their cell phones while they're driving and having their hands on the cell phone. When we started the seatbelt issue, we had a lot of problems too, and we worked through that. And I would say this is a work in progress, and it's going to take some time to get the thing to where it's functioning the way we want it to, but we have to start somewhere. And so the bill that we passed off the Senate, I think, is in pretty good shape. We have another bill coming up where the fines are heavier, and we'll see where that goes. But I think the bills we've had so far probably are going to be a good start.
Representative Luke?
Well, I think the most important element of this is coming up with something that our folks in law enforcement can enforce and that the citizens can understand, no, I'm not supposed to be doing that, and it's clear. And that's the challenge, because the technology changes way faster than we can tinker with the law. because you just think about the touch screens and stuff that are in your car, in addition to cell phones. But I think that's the real challenge. Unfortunately, some folks have to have a pretty stern reminder before they'll change their behavior. And that's where, where's that line? I don't think we're not doing this because it'd be a revenue generator from that perspective, but there's got to be a spot there where it's clearly a deterrent to violate the law, and we'll see where that goes as to what level of fine might be appropriate. But to me, the tough part here is to making sure that law enforcement can consistently, fairly apply this by what they see out there happening, and then that is or isn't a violation of law, because if there's any confusion, then that creates a lot of heartburn with everybody, the citizens, and the judicial system has to sort it out. And it'd be nice if you're here and it's clear and it was a problem, and rather than spending a lot of time trying to say, well, did we really violate the law? So, but we've got to move on this, because the technology, too many times part of the accident investigation is examining a cell phone and finding out somebody was texting right before they smashed into somebody, and we just can't have that.